Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Val Smith. I'm president of Swarthmore, and I hope that you all are enjoying this beautiful weekend on campus. I am delighted to welcome you all to the annual McCabe Lecture, the highlight of Garnet Weekend. The name Swarthmore is synonymous with the highest ideals of a liberal arts education. So this year's topic could not be more relevant to all of us. There is arguably no greater proponent and practitioner of liberal arts education than today's lecturer, Patrick Awuah, from the class of 1989. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Patrick back to Swarthmore and to say that it is wonderful for all of us to have him here today. As is our custom, I will introduce the current McCabe Scholar, who will in turn introduce this year's lecturer. But first, please let me provide a bit of background on this lecture series and its origins. Thomas B. McCabe is a legendary figure at Swarthmore. The former chairman and CEO of Scott Paper Company, he held several important government offices, including chair of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System and public governor of the New York Stock Exchange. Mr. McCabe believed deeply in the value of education and was widely honored for his contributions to the field. During his lifetime, he received honorary doctoral degrees from 15 colleges and universities, including Swarthmore and the Universities of Maryland and Delaware. President Harry Truman awarded him the Medal of Merit for his contributions to education, business, and government. Mr. McCabe graduated from Swarthmore in 1915. His vision, foresight, and generosity have shaped our college profoundly for much of the past century. Generations of Swarthmore students have studied in the Thomas B. and Jeanette L. McCabe Library. The Scott Amphitheater, where new students celebrate first collection and graduating seniors celebrate commencement, was a gift from Mr. McCabe. He also established the McCabe Achievement Awards Scholarship Fund, which has awarded scholarships to some 300 students. Over the years, we have come to know these students as the McCabes, and many of them, both current students and alumni, are here with us today. The McCabe Lecture, established in Mr. McCabe's honor, made its debut in 1986. It reflects his commitment to education and his belief in young people's potential to make their marks on the world. This lecture is given every year by an individual with a distinguished career in any of a wide range of fields. This year's focus, as I mentioned, liberal arts education, lies at the very heart of who we are and who we've always been. The McCabe Scholars Society co-president Jeff Novak will introduce this year's lecturer. Jeff is a junior from Westchester, PA, pursuing a double major in math and computer science. And like so many Swarthmore students, Jeff is quite active outside the classroom as well. He serves as head tour guide in the admissions office and interns in the Office of Student Engagement. He also spends time mentoring other students in the computer science department and stays in shape playing club soccer. Please join me in welcoming McCabe co-president Jeff Novak.
Welcome all to the annual Thomas B. McCabe Memorial Lecture. I have the absolute pleasure of introducing this year's lecturer, Patrick Awuah, class of 1989, and founder and president of Ashesi University in Ghana. In 1985, Patrick, a native of Accra, Ghana, enrolled at Swarthmore College, where he pursued a double major in engineering and economics. Upon graduating, he worked at Microsoft Corporation, whereupon, after 6 years of working there and the birth of his child, he decided that he needed to have an impact on Ghana for his sake as well as his child's. He decided that the best way to do this would be to start a private liberal arts university in Ghana to educate the country's next top leaders. After quitting his job at Microsoft in 2007 to pursue this goal, Patrick earned an MBA from the Haas School of Business at the University of California, Berkeley, graduating in 1999. With his own funds, as well as those of donors and investors, he started Ashesi University in 2002. Now in its 14th year, Ashesi has grown from a small university housed in a collection of rented buildings and serving 30 students to a university of 500 students located on its own 100-acre campus about an hour outside of Accra. Along the way, Ashesi and Patrick have won many awards. In 2012, Ashesi was recognized as one of the top 10 companies in Ghana, the first educational institution to receive this award. In the same year, Patrick was recognized as the fourth most respected CEO in Ghana. Patrick has won many prestigious international awards and honors, including the MacArthur Fellowship, the McNulty Prize, membership in the Order of the Volta, one of Ghana's highest awards for exemplifying the ideal of service to the country, recognition as one of the world's 50 greatest leaders by Forbes, and the Elise and Walter A. Haas International Award for a distinguished record of service to his country. Patrick served from 2010 to 2016 on the Advisory Committee on Voluntary Foreign Aid of the U.S. Agency for International Development. He is a fellow of the Africa Leadership Initiative, of the Aspen Global Leadership Network, and a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and a member of the Tau Beta Pi Honor Society for Excellence in Engineering. I can't say enough how much of a privilege it is to have him with us today. Please join me in welcoming Patrick Awuah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, President Smith, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for inviting me to lecture the McCabe Lecture series here at Swarthmore. It's a real honor to be here, and it gives me great pleasure always to come back to campus. I have such fond memories of Swarthmore, and I'm incredibly proud of my alma mater. I just recently read that Swarthmore ranks number 4 in the world among undergraduate institutions for producing Nobel Prize winners per capita, and that's just incredible. And also number 4 in the United States for students who go on to get doctorates. And so this is an institution that really is it's really top in the world, and I feel so privileged to be part of the Swarthmore community and to be invited back. 2 days ago, I took a walk on our campus at Ashesi with a brilliant Ghanaian sculptor. And we were discussing the possible location for several art installations on campus. And this is the question: where to install this giant snail? Or this mechanical butterfly? And it occurred to me as we were walking around campus that actually I did this exact same exercise in Professor Ketau's art history course. You know, we had to write an essay on where to install the rock slide. And, you know, we went and looked at this sculpture, and we drew it, and we walked around campus and sketched parts of campus and made the case individually where we would put the sculpture. Now, I can say the same for many other courses that I took here at Swarthmore: engineering, economics, literature. It is amazing to me how much my Swarthmore experience factors in my life today and in my work in ways big and small. It is absolutely astonishing. It continues to touch my work. The scholarship that made my education possible here in the first place, the liberal arts and sciences, which is a very new way of learning for me, having come from Ghana, from an educational system steeped in rote memorization, and a model of education that sort of educated my whole mind and gave me new eyes to see, and caused me to think differently. So here's what I'm about. When I left Swarthmore, it was with great pride of having graduated as an engineer. I'd always wanted to be an engineer. And I came here and I did that, and we designed and built things. I also double majored in economics and then went to work at Microsoft. And for 8 years, well, not quite 8 years, I was totally focused on the fun of being an engineer. And then my son was born, and it changed everything. Suddenly, I was thinking about the generation that my son represented and the generations after his generation and what Africa would mean to those generations. And I was thinking about what role people like me, who had had all the opportunities, should play. Suddenly, living an upper middle class life in the United States didn't seem enough. And my work at Microsoft engineering, which I loved, suddenly became, well, this is just software. And it was really strange because up until then, software was the coolest thing. And suddenly, I was looking back at the map of the world. When I see this map of the world at night, I see a map of development. And the question was, how do we change this map to look like this, where the African night is lit brightly? And so I decided I ought to go back to Ghana and I ought to help with development. I thought I would start a software company, and then realized that that wouldn't work so well because people that I knew who had studied computer science and computer engineering had done it studying by rote. People that I'd met who had attempted to start software companies in Ghana described difficulty in hiring a well-qualified labor pool. And so I decided that it'd be too difficult to start a software company. And so somehow I decided to do this instead, to start a university. And back then, this idea that starting a software company would be too difficult, but that starting a university would be feasible, seemed entirely reasonable. And by the way, I blame Swarthmore for that. Swarthmore and Microsoft. Swarthmore because it taught me to think laterally, and Microsoft because of the incredible can-do spirit that was present on the teams that I worked in. Now, so what was this lateral thinking? I started to do a different exercise of taking different problems in Ghana and asking for each problem, why is this the way it is? And when you ask that question, you get a set of answers. And if you take each of those answers and ask why, and you drill down, you get to leadership as a fundamental problem. The people in positions of influence, the decision makers who are accepting the status quo or who are corrupt and so on. And I thought, well, we need to change leadership. Or we need to, actually, what I should say, we need to build the next bench of leaders in Africa. And that seemed like something I could get engaged with. And so we built Ashesi. And it's actually come incredibly close to our vision, both physically in terms of the campus and in terms of the software, what goes on in this hardware is also very close to what we envisioned. We started with 30 students. We're now at approximately 800 students. We're on our way to getting to 1,000 students in the next 3 years or so. Now, some of what goes on at Ashesi, you will recognize here at Swarthmore. This is a very inclusive community. We have been very committed, my team and I, to this idea that everyone belongs. 50% of our students are on scholarship. 30% pay nothing at all. That scholarship I got from Swarthmore mattered a lot to me. And the story of my scholarship, by the way, was that my family was responsible for $100 a year. And that proved actually a burden to us, because even though my parents could afford $100 a year, my family didn't have $400 in the bank that I could show to a U.S. consular officer in order to get a visa for a 4-year course of study. And so Swarthmore waived family obligation to zero. And so we're very committed to this, the idea that we should pass forward this generosity. And we've built a campus that is the only 100% accessible campus in Ghana, and setting an example for all our colleagues that we ought to build institutions that are accessible. The idea that faculty are people who guide a debate, who don't give answers to students, but who engage them in a conversation about the important, deep questions. What is the truth? What is beauty? What is the good society that we want to see on our continent? And how do we get there? And by the way, I recognized something when I started Ashesi that I hadn't even recognized when I was here, that actually the liberal arts and sciences are a powerful way to educate entrepreneurs, not least because it is a model of education that encourages students first to take intellectual risks in the classroom, to share ideas with each other. And that risk-taking and that process of discovery, of imagining something new and questioning the status quo is actually very fundamental to entrepreneurship. Our students learn by doing. And by doing, I mean they are building their own good society. Our students in 2008 developed an honor system, the first in Africa, which has now been replicated by 2 secondary schools in Ghana, where they have individually and corporately decided to build a community of trust. And I remember the day we invited the first class to vote to establish his honor system. And the student who was sitting in the front, and as I described what we were about to do, she just sort of expressed under her breath, "This is beautiful, beauty." And, this is what we're about. Students learn by building things, designing and building. The second thing is, we are a university without walls. We're trying to not have boundaries between us and our community, between us and the traditional rulers of the village that our campus is based in. We are a community that is very actively engaged. So as part of our liberal arts core curriculum, students do community service and they get graded for it. And so they reach out and they help the disadvantaged. They're learning to do things such as thinking through agriculture and business and how to make agriculture, move it from subsistence to a business. Our faculty are engaged with our students in urban slums. So this is a picture from an area in Accra that is actually infamous for being one of the world's worst e-waste toxic sites. And working with those communities there to build maker spaces and teach people to take that waste and turn it into something else. Faculty and students who are engaged with these women, we call them the Kayaye, who are head porters in our markets, providing early childhood education for their children so that their children will not fall into this cycle of poverty. Students who started a company in 2007, 4 of our students co-founded a company called Dream Oval. Today it is 40 people. They did a project on campus with electronic payments. Now in 2007 that was too early for Ghana. But today, it is a thriving business. They're working with banks. Their electronic money system is being actually rolled out at banks. And the point of all of this is that we're educating people and engaged in a way where we're thinking about the models, the economic models of how to engage in our community and engage where the state is absent. We are engaging our students in a way that builds empathy from just addressing some difficult problems. We're engaging them in a way that builds confidence that comes from actually designing and deploying a solution that works. And we're engaging them in a way that builds humility, the humility that comes from making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. Araba Emwesi, and now Araba Hammond, as part of her Leadership 4 course, decided to volunteer her time at an orphanage. And she was so touched by this experience that she changed her career goals from computer science to helping run this orphanage. She became the chief operating officer. And when she joined that organization, their primary school moved from being, a challenged place to a school that was producing kids who were graduating among the top 5% academically in our country. And I remember visiting this primary school, and Araba told me they were going to start a high school. And I thought, Araba, this orphanage and this primary school have plenty enough work. Well, they did. They did build that high school, and it became the first secondary school in Ghana where students, teenagers, have an honor system that is student-run. And they have started a movement in our country. There's a second secondary school, a much older one, that has joined them. And what I think we are doing is we are educating the beautiful ones that Africa has been waiting for. And it's very humbling for me to be part of that. Swarthmore is always very close to this endeavor. If you visit our campus, you will see echoes of Swarthmore everywhere. It is intentional. But let's go back to where I started. This question of a continent transformed is a very big question. And everything that we've accomplished to date is still yet just a beginning. There is a lot of work to do. I think that we need to move to a systems level now. This transformation we're talking about will not be achieved by one institution. It will not be achieved by one village. It'll take 1,000 villages to achieve this. And so what we need to do at Ashesi is we need to catalyze a network of like-minded institutions that are absolutely committed to ethics and the liberal arts and sciences. This is the next big thing that we're going to do. We also need to continue to work on our academic program, the curriculum, and our engagement with students. Last year, we developed a new course called Foundations of Design and Entrepreneurship, where students learned design thinking. They learned to ask the question, what are the important questions we need to answer? What are some important problems to solve? And then they design solutions to those problems. We give them a small grant, and they start a small enterprise or organization to tackle that problem. And so for the first year, they learn by doing, really. And that becomes a foundation for the rest of their time at Ashesi. We need to move to the next level and think about how we educate people who are going to work in the public space and public sector, who are going to be enabling of entrepreneurship and economic development on our continent. But most of all, we need to build that network of universities and colleges, what I like to think of as a self-organizing, self-developing system of schools and colleges that are going to change our world. Thank you very much.